Welcome, heroes and villains. Welcome, heroes and villains. Stop your fighting and sit down at my table. Well, we discuss a tabletop role-playing game with an expert on it. At least I believe that she's an expert. Anyways, I am the titular Fjook, and this is Fjook's Table. And today I have with me Becky Rose of the Pair of Geeks fame, and we'll be talking about the tabletop role-playing game Corporation. And if you want to introduce yourself any further or differently, I will let you do that at this time.
Hi, I am indeed Becky Rose. I did label myself as the Eurasian Incorporated Recruitment Agent because I thought I'd keep it in theme for the role-playing game. But yes, this is the game we're going to be discussing today, and its computer game port is playing in the background of me right now. So I just duck out the way briefly. There we go. Stuff happening on screen. So yes, what do you want to know about Corporation? It's brilliant. You should go and play it. That's kind of what you need to know.
I've watched a few of your videos. I've watched a few of your live plays on Pair of Geeks too, but I still don't understand Corporation at all. Could you explain more than it's awesome?
You wouldn't do if you watched one of my live plays because I don't stick to the script at all. Yeah, no, the way I tend to play Corporation is dialed up to 12 and beyond. I mean, Corporation is a game that, by its very nature, this game is it's dialed up to full volume, right? It's ridiculous and over the top, and that's one of the things I really love about it. I suppose, I mean, if I start talking about what the game actually is, its genre and stuff, it is a cyberpunk genre game. It's set in the year 2500, where the world is owned by 5 corporations, which is kind of like, I think they got the date line wrong there. That's now. But the world is owned by 5 corporations. And in this game, you play the bad guys. So you're working for the corporations. So it's completely the opposite of what you do in normal cyberpunk genre games, where you're fighting the system. In this game, you are the system. So you're a cybernetically enhanced superhuman agent that's going around doing all the corporate crime. And it's just a brilliantly ridiculous, over-the-top game. So when I play this game, and if you watch the live plays on my channel, I take it even further than I think the rules were intended and make it even more ridiculous and over the top. Because I think the game's just meant for that. It's meant to be not taken too seriously and have a lot of laughs with. So yeah, that's the basics of what Corporation is.
Is it a D6, D10, D20 dice system?
It uses a system called the Brutal system, and it's published by Brutal Games. So they kind of have their own system, and it's a 2D10 based system. And the way that works is you have a stat and you have a skill. So if you want to make a skill check of any kind, you add a stat to a skill that gets you your target number, and then you roll under it on 2D10. And double 1 is usually a crit, double 0 is usually a failure. But actually, one of the interesting things they did is they've got equipment conditions. So if you've got an exceptional piece of equipment, it will critical on double 1 or double 2. And you can go all the way up to really amazing bits of equipment that will sort of critical all the way up to 00. And conversely, if something's not very good, if it's broken, worn out, or old, it can fail on more doubles as well. So doubles can be quite cool in Corporation.
So what type of attributes are in this game?
Oh, I'm going to have to look at the character sheet. Because when I GM, I always have a character sheet for whatever game I'm playing in front of me, because every game calls things slightly differently. So in this, your base stats, as it were, you've got strength, endurance, agility, reflexes, perception, intelligence, and presence. So, I mean, they're on the same kind of vein as most sort of role-playing game systems there. But then when it gets to skills is where it completely diverges from, the normal fantasy trope of games. So you've got things like assess tech, athletics, business, close combat is in there, but then you've got computers and AI, corporate knowledge, cybernetics and robotics. You've got all the various different firearm skills. One of the most important skills of all is looking good. They made looking good a skill, which is it's just one of those very ridiculous things in corporation, because sometimes that matters. Yeah, so but if you want to play a cyberpunk game, that you've really got three choices, haven't you? You've got the original cyberpunk, which, love it or loathe it, it's it's genre defining, as it were. But then there's if you want to add orcs and elves, there's Shadowrun. So you can get your trolls and your shaman and everything else. But then what about if you want to play the bad guys? Play the actual corpos. That's what Corporation is for. And it's a game where you don't have to take it quite so seriously. So, you're playing Cyberpunk, it's all kind of gritty and that's, you could do gritty in Corporation, you can do gritty in any game, but that kind of that dirt of being on the streets is very much the sort of ambience of Cyberpunk. Whereas Corporation, lets you go around in a great big gold-plated 4x4 if you want, because you're working for the corporations. You should absolutely have a gold-plated car. Why would you not? You've got to show off your wealth. So it's that kind of ridiculousness that I love about Corporation. It doesn't take itself too seriously.
I know you've been playing role-playing games for some years now. How did you find the Corporation? And what drew you to Corporation?
I'm sorry, did I catch the question right? How did I find the game?
Yeah.
Where did I first see it? I was walking around a convention, Dragon Meet, many years ago. I mean, Dragon Meet, this is so long ago, Dragon Meet has changed venue twice since. And there was a little small vendor hall at that particular Dragon Meet. It's gotten a lot bigger since. And there was just a shop, a role-playing game shop, not even like Corporation or Brutal Games themselves weren't there. It was just somebody reselling, all sorts of different RPG stuff. I saw this on their book rack. I picked it up. I read the back cover. And I thought, that sounds an awful lot like an old computer game I used to play. Because back in the 16-bit era of computer games, there was this game by a company called Bullfrog called Syndicate. And they did do a version much later, Syndicate Wars, which came out in the 32-bit era. But and then there was a very terrible first-person shooter in that line as well, which was awful. But Syndicate was goes right back to the dawn of 16-bit computer games, and you played some cybernetically enhanced agents. You played the bad guys, and I thought, oh, this reminds me a lot of that. I wonder what that would be like to play as a role-playing game. But it was 25, 30 quid or whatever. I didn't have much money then, so I left it. And then at Christmas, a friend who was with at Dragon Meet gave me a signed copy that he'd gone and found somewhere. He'd gone and bought this signed copy for me, and gave it to me as a Christmas present.
Is that the same signed copy in your hand?
No, this is another copy. I you know what? I think it's up by my bedroom table. I think I was reading it.
I know Dungeons and Dragons and Shadowrun have both gone through multiple editions. Does Corporation go through different editions, or how does it keep the sales up? Brutal.
I really want him to do a new edition, but he says no. What they've done is splat books, basically. So much like you do get for D&D and Shadowrun and all the others, is you get expansion books. So there's for each of the major corporations, bar one, because it hasn't come out yet, there is an extra book that gives you like tons of info about the world, about new equipment, and I really enjoy some of the splat books. Are actually really, really good. I particularly like the Japanese themed one. but so that's how he's kept his money. But actually, the guy behind it, James Norbury, the guy that writes this, is a reasonably successful artist. So he's actually he spends a lot of his time these days, and I think this is the reason why we haven't had our last Splat book yet. But he's drawing this cartoon called Big Panda Tiny Dragon. Honestly, I don't know his personal finances as to how much of his income comes from these books, but I think that's his main focus. So I don't think it necessarily needs to break even in the same way that D&D does.
So from what I understand from what you're saying, if I go buy a brand new copy of Corporation, it will be same as the one you got years ago that is signed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how you got Corporation. How did you fall in love with it?
Well, it wasn't the first time I played it, I have to say. When I very first played Corporation, it was a complete disaster because nobody else I knew had played it. And so, I thought I'd run it. But here's the strange thing. When you haven't played a game before, you don't necessarily know how to run that game. And with Corporation, when I first got it, I definitely didn't know how to run the game. I struggled with it. Now, since then, as I've learned more about the game, I've realized that what I really should have done for my first missions was follow a mission format. You get the players at the start of the game into some kind of mission briefing, and that sends them off to the first encounter, and go from there. But I didn't get that at all when I very first started it, which is kind of a shame because even the main rule book is just full of so much inspiration for ideas. And I think the problem is I got some inspiration for ideas from something I'd read in the rule book. Because this is DM's book, player's book, and plot inspiration combined. The rule book is really all you do need as a minimum. Although I absolutely love all the extra books you can get for it. But I've just opened it up on a random page. It's a backstory about... Sorry, my green screen's making it hard to see. But it's backstory about an off-world satellite bio-research facility. So it's just full of stuff that kind of inspires adventure. So I went off and ran the world's worst game of Corporation when I got the book. And really, as much as I kind of wanted to understand the game better and play it again, of course, the players I was playing with didn't really want that because I'd done such a terrible job the first time. So it kind of stayed on my shelf until the man that I'm now marrying saw it in the background of one of my videos on a YouTube video and left a comment, and that's how we met. Jason saw Corporation in the background of one of my videos, says, "Oh, we got Corporation. Do you want a game sometime?" And Jason ran a game of Corporation, and it clicked for me when he ran it. I thought, "Oh, now I see how I should have run this game." So that's really when I fell in love with the game, and then of course I fell in love with him, and I'm now marrying him. So what do you know? YouTube comments can get you far in life.
So, that is a lot to take in. So do you have any advice for people? Do you have any other advice for people picking up Corporation besides to run it, like mission briefings?
Yeah, well, look, when you first play any new RPG, and this isn't just Corporation, I've said before that adventure books and quest books for RPG games is not something I normally use, right? I kind of they're too constrained, they're too linear, they're too a game on rails. But when you're trying something in a new genre that you're not used to running, that is definitely the place to start. And then once you've got the game going, by all means, go off the rails. And I do read quest books for ideas. I'll take little bits and pieces sometimes from quests I've read, but I would suggest that get one of the quests. They're honestly they're so, on Drive Through RPG. You can pick up different storylines you can run for Corporation for a couple of quid. And there's loads of Christmas themed ones as well. You can take out a cybernetically enhanced turkey. There's let me get this right if I can, a chest burster nano Jesus story. There's
Wait. Did you just say the words chest burster nano Jesus story?
Yes.
All in a row.
Yes. I haven't actually read that one, but I remember when James was writing it, because I was playing in a game with him at the time. And he mentioned it, that he just came up with this chest burster nano Jesus. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's lots of Christmas themed ones that I have played one of them actually, and a good laugh.
So, how would a group decide which of the 5 corporations to work for?
I don't think it matters which one you pick. Each one is slightly different, and the correct one to pick is Eurasian Incorporated, by the way. Because, like, you got the Western Federation now. They're the sort of the tropey Americans, very much. In this year in 2500, they've become a kind of a sort of a fascist, puritanical corporation, but they make the best guns, of course, because America, which is fine, but it's too much like real life. Then you got the Japanese, very much about their ion swords. So if you want to have a lightsaber, that's basically you'd go for the Shiokiro Corporation. There's Asian, which is all about your industry and stuff, and their heavy industry and crime. So you can play a triad character, and the key thing with them is they can swap their identity between two completely different identities. Yeah, which is all fine. Then there's the Commerce, which are sort of like the good guys, but not really, but sort of. If you've got real moral objections to just how evil and corrupt you can be in corporation, then go for Comoros, because they're the softer ones, as it were. They try and do things for the greater good. It's just sometimes the greater good involves individual crimes. But EI are the right corporation because they're the richest. So that's the one you should pick. You get the most money, so you can buy the flashiest gear, and make sure your looking good score is high, because there is no point completing a mission if you don't do it in style. And EI is all about the style, which is why you should pick EI. But there are others, of course. You're free to choose your own, or make one up.
So have you ever run a game for the other corporations, or besides ones you've made up, or EI?
Only once. And every time it's always EI. EI is just awesome. That, like, you have to have your players as EI. It's just like that's how it should be.
I think you may be a wee bit biased there, just a wee bit.
Well, yeah, but you see, the reason it works, when you read the lore, is Eurasian Incorporated are just so much more extreme than everyone else. Like, the Americans might have the best guns mechanically, but EI agents will have the biggest guns because they don't care about collateral damage. So what if you're going to get sued? You've got lawyers. So, you might have the very best assault rifle on the market, but I've got a bazooka because I'm EI and I don't care about court cases. And that's why I love it. It's that over-the-top ridiculousness. That corporation just nails that so much better than any other game, and it's what makes role-playing fun, when you can just be so ludicrously over the top. And when I run corporation and my players, let's say my players kill a passerby because they I don't know, or even if they kill the person they're aiming for, right? I will then go off and narrate what happens in the future to that person's family, to the players. You know, oh, you've just shot the security guard in order to get past him. Well, it's great you've done that, and you'll of course, be able to carry on in your mission. Meanwhile, his wife will be waiting at home for him tonight, and he won't turn up because he's dead. She was utterly dependent on his income because she's got a debilitating illness, and I'll just narrate off of these tangents about the absolute carnage that they've caused. Which, if you did that in D&D, it'd be like, oh yeah, the Orcs family. Nobody cares about the Orcs family. Right? They're not human. They're not relatable. I don't care if the hobgoblin had children because it's D&D, right? You don't. But in Corporation, your adversary is a human, so you can sort of tell these very human stories about the consequences of the players, but it kind of doesn't matter because your players are fundamentally the bad guys.
So it sounds like you've had quite a few epic adventures running Corporation. Are there any that you would like to share?
Or honestly, I've shared some adventures I probably shouldn't have on my YouTube channel because some of those get very adult. And I don't know if I could necessarily talk about those adventures on your channel, but I did run a game of Corporation at the UK Games Expo 2 or 3 years ago. It was a session I called Meet You in France. And the premise was that France in Corporation, or France has been nuked. There's nothing there anymore. They decided to hand their country over to an AI, and the first thing that AI did was immediately nuke itself. And nobody knows why. And that's just in the law as something that it's there. It's a peculiarity of France. So you can go and set missions in this sort of, apocalyptic wasteland if you want. So I decided I'd do exactly that. And what I thought I'd do is I'd have one of the corporations. This is one of the few times I've run a game that wasn't Eurasian Incorporated. I think possibly the only time. So one of the corporations had basically spotted on their satellite feed some wild horses. And, in France, some wild irradiated nuclear horses. And this was immediately interesting to the corporation. They wanted to get these horses. So they sent in some people on a submarine, sent in the agents on a submarine. Out of the submarine comes all these vehicles with the agents in, and that was their mission, was to go and find these horses and retrieve them. But the reason they wanted these horses is because in the far future, all the meat is vat grown. Nobody's had real meat. So the corporation has already auctioned off all of the meat it doesn't yet even possess for really high prices in order to fund the mission and make a huge profit. So the players are having to go and rescue these otherwise extinct animals so that they can be brought back, slaughtered, and served up on dinner plates for the rich, right? So that was my very evil adventure. I ran at UK Games Expo a few years ago, and the big twist on that one is I basically sent in I made it a joint operation between two corporations. I think, if I remember rightly, I think it was the Western Federation and Shield Heroes, the Americans and Japanese corporation. So, of course, at the end of the mission, they all pile onto each other because they each want to betray the other and steal the horses, right? And that was kind of all a bit expected by everyone at the table. They all kind of knew that would happen. But what they didn't realize was the moment they did that, I also then had the other bad guys, Eurasian Incorporated, turn up as a non-player, faction, with a giant walking robot that picks the submarine off, and then the final scene is this walking robot walking off into the sunset with the submarine over its shoulder. Because you can do that in Corporation, and it was a ridiculous way to twist the ending when they thought all the players thought they'd managed to actually successfully rustle the horses, and then it was just going to be like, okay, which side of the table is actually going to get the horses and kill the other? And it was like, no, none of you. There's giant robots come along and stolen your submarine that you're in. So yeah, that was
Wait,
quite a memorable
everyone was
ending.
in the submarine?
Yeah, with the horses. Yeah. So
Okay.
They're fighting within the submarine. The party themselves, because the two different corporations are trying to decide who's going to get the horses. So they're starting to, launch grenades and bazookas and everything at each other, and that's when the submarine gets picked up by a giant walking robot and carried off to England.
So, is there anything else regarding corporation that you would like to talk about?
I mean, well, I think, seeing as I've got it here, what I'm going to do is I'll shrink myself down. I think we should have just a little look at this, right? This is, I'll shrink myself off screen. There we go. So this is something I'm working on. This is the forthcoming. This is also, I should just point out, this is very early stages of development, but this is a computer game version of Corporation. As I mentioned, you're seeing it very early in development. For example, I haven't yet done a sky, but as you see here, I've got the beginnings of a city that's sort of alive and living when there's traffic around. I seem to not have any. There we go. The indicators on the cars all kind of work. Everything here is a real light source, so I can walk into the headlights here and I get illuminated. Even the indicators light up and cause illumination on stuff. So this is just a thing I haven't done collision with cars yet, so you can walk into them at the moment. We'll pretend that didn't happen. So yeah, this is something I've been working on, and last weekend I added a little something. I've started putting in crowd reactions to being shot and stuff. So if I go and do that now, I've accidentally created a mass shooting simulator here. So if I just attack this person here, you see how these other people around are starting to beg for their lives, and there we go, running away in panic. People are now sort of going, "Oh, what's going on? No, don't shoot me! Don't shoot me!" Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So there we go, and that's sort of sending the crowd into a panic. So yeah, this is basically a computer game version of Corporation that should be coming out in the next couple of years, because this is, as I say, early in development at the moment. Yeah, of course, you'll be playing as Eurasian Incorporated in this game. It's set in India. And what I'll do is I'll bring myself back on screen and I'll put the game away for now. If I can just set my camera back, because I think the green screen effect on this camera isn't terribly good. There we go. So yeah, the idea is the game's set in India, and you'll see the parallels in a moment as I explain what happens. So the government has set up an experimental enclosed city to test out some new ideas for how to build a city. And once they've got these ideas working, the idea is the government will roll them out worldwide, right? So this enclosed environment called Compound 7 that the game is set in is basically socialism. So they're sort of testing some socialist ideas in the city. So your job as Eurasian Incorporated is to go in and basically commercialize and privatize absolutely everything in the city via a process of breaking in and hacking computers, killing scientists, removing scientists, kidnapping people, planting bombs, the usual kind of madness you get up to in any kind of cyberpunk game. And so throughout the course of the game, the city sort of gradually becomes more and more neon, and more and more debauchery and stuff as the kind of fabric of the city sort of becomes more and more westernized. So a few historical parallels there, perhaps.
I learned a lot more about Corporation than I thought I would.
Oh, good. Are you excited to give it a go?
I don't know if I have a group that is willing to try any cyberpunk system, but I will pitch it to them, and next time I'm up to jam.
Okay, well, if you come back to me and say they didn't take it, then we need to spend another hour talking about this game until we convince them, okay, because they have to give it a go. Honestly, I've never had so much fun with a role-playing game as I have with Corporation, simply because the way the game is set up and the very premise is that all your players are already have this kind of non-verbal contract that we know this is going to be ridiculous, and it's allowed to be ridiculous, so we can be over the top and ham it up in ways you can't do in other games. And that is what makes it just so much fun at the table. It's why it's become my go-to sci-fi game.
And I know this wasn't Conversations with Fjook, which are basically scripted, but it's still my show, and I'm gonna end it with this question because I like to end it with this question. Anything or anyone you would like to shout out this time?
Anything or anyone I'd like to shout out? Okay, right. I'll keep it in theme. There is a YouTube channel, the URL for which we'll have to find later and put in the description, but it is a Corporation YouTube channel where the guy who wrote this book basically did a load of stop motion Lego videos set in the world setting of Corporation. So you need to go and find that YouTube channel or watch those stop motion Lego videos because they are very silly.
Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Thank you, Becky Rose, for joining me.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Go get Corporation and try it. Seriously, it's awesome. Gave me a husband. I mean, what more could I want?
Yeah. Do all the YouTube things, and may all your schemes and hooks be successful.
Take care, everyone.